Hello, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I have lots of great stuff to go over with you today, as always, and I'm going to start out with the stats, as always. And basically, when we're looking at Central Florida last week, there were 325 homes that sold, and that was 345 the week before. Now, this is actually for the week of February 16th to the 22nd. So next week is going to be higher, but it might be a little bit weird because the end of the month is on Friday, and so they might not all be updated until, Monday or so. So it might not exactly be perfect, but there should be more homes sold next week because there's always at the end of the week, it's always a rush to get homes sold. So that's what's going on. Now, the median price increased slightly to $429. It was at $425 last week. And actually, there were 3 foreclosed homes that sold last week. The inventory is still increasing at 92. And when we're looking at those 325 homes and where they sold, there were 31 under 250, 21 between 250 and 300, 76 between 300 and 400, 83 between 400 and 500, 97 between 500 and a million, and 17 over a million. When you're looking at the months of inventory, we're at 5.73 overall, 4.22 under 250, 5.49, 5.22, 4.47, 10.98 over a million, but everybody else is in that normal range. Then when you're at the list to ask price ratio, we're at 96.86. So that's down a little bit. It's been in the 97s. Under 250, it's at 94.13 and 95.24, 250 to 300. And then over a million, it's 94.38. And all the rest of them are in the 96s, 97s, 98s. And that's kind of typical. So when you're looking at that, the houses that are on the lower end and now actually up to 300 is considered under the lower end. And so there's more negotiating room that's available for them. So on the lower end, there is definitely a lot more room for negotiating. And so if that means that you're looking for seller closing costs, if that means that you're looking for some kind of a discount, you're going to find it on the lower end and the higher end. And the reason that you don't see it on the middle is that because that's where everybody's at and there's more competition and everything there. So you might still get seller closing costs. We might be able to negotiate that for you. But basically, there is some room in the market today in regards to what's going on. Now, the interesting thing, however, is that when you're looking at the price that everything is selling for, we're seeing that definitely the prices are not decreasing. They're kind of staying where they're at. They're staying steady. And we've been seeing the inventory increase for the last couple of years is basically what's going on with that. So that's also interesting in what we're looking at. Now, when you're looking at the condos, townhomes, and villas, the number of them that sold last week was 96, and it was 89 the week before, so pretty consistent. The median price increased to $299. Now, the condos are interesting. They go from kind of $250 to $299, and so we're at the higher end this week. And their inventory actually increased by 37, so not as many as sold. So that's actually a positive in my mind, but we're only looking at 1 week, so it could be a little bit different. Now, when we're looking at how everything shakes down when it comes to the condos, townhomes, and villas, is that we're looking at, just trying to find my page here, flipping through a couple things here. All right, here we are. So under 250, there were 35 of the 96, and then 14 between 250 and 300, 32 between 3 and 400, 6 between 400 and 500, 9 between 500 and a million, and none of them sold over a million, which there are 15 on the market. So when you're looking at the months of inventory, we're over 10 overall, 10.35, 11 under 250, 10.5, 250 to 300, 8 between 300 and 400, 21 months between 400 and 500, and 8 months between 500 and a million. But the interesting thing is that the final list to ask price was at 96.68, so pretty close to where it is and the single family home. So even though there's a higher inventory, we're not really looking at a big difference in the negotiating power. Now, when it comes to a condo or a townhouse or a villa, and you're looking at that and you're looking at the amount of inventory that is out there, which is definitely a buyer's market. And we just had a closing last week on a condo, and the condo owner told me they thanked me, and they said they were so thankful that they did use me. They had another realtor before me, and I came in and I told them this is what it's going to be, and we're going to have to be aggressive, and we were. And as a result of it, we sold their unit. Actually, it took a couple of months because I did have an offer on this property a month before at the same price, but it just took the owner a little bit to wrap their head around it. It was within the range of what we had discussed when we were sitting down and going over everything. And so she knew that it was going to be there, but she was hoping she would get a little bit more. But she did thank me because when she looked at it, when she closed, she said, "I am so thankful that I used you," because basically the bottom line is that like this inventory that we're talking about, that there are 17 more units in her subdivision that are on the market, and hers is the only one that's sold. And so basically, when you're looking at that, that's when it does make a lot of sense to really consider who you're going to use, who's going to make it happen for you, and what's going to happen as a result of it. Because basically the bottom line is that we all want to have this, that, and the other thing happen, but we can't have it happen unless we are doing what our due diligence in doing the things that other people aren't willing to do to make it happen. It's not just about throwing it on the market and waiting for something to happen. You've got to make something happen if you're a seller. And it's still with the buyers too. I mean, I've got some buyers that I'm working with as well. And basically they're having a little bit, they're not just finding what they want on the market right now. There are choices, but it's not the choice that they want. They want a backyard that doesn't have anybody behind them, and they want to make sure that it's going to be there for the future too. So there was one house that we found that we looked at, and you looked at the bird's eye view and you're like, okay, looks great. There's nobody behind them. It's just woods. But then you look at who owns those woods behind it, and it is owned actually by the builder who built the house that they were looking at purchasing. So they aren't building there yet, but it's just a matter of time, and they will be. So how long do they want to be there without having the rear neighbors and then know that they're going to? So when you're looking for the no rear neighbors, I like to look for golf courses. I like to look for lakes. I look to look for the things that are definitely not going to change. If it's owned by the homeowners association, that it's just their common ground and they've got that going, then that's something that you can look for. But you want to make sure that when you're making the decision and you've got things that are important to you, that you're doing the things that you need to do to make sure that you're getting exactly what you're looking for. So basically, whether you're a buyer or seller, whether the market's got excess inventory or not enough inventory, you still have to go through and find what's really working, and what that needle in the haystack property if you're looking as a buyer. And basically the other side of the coin is if you're a seller, then you've got to make sure that you're getting exactly what you want there too. So it doesn't really matter. Everything is important. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to go over with you today some things of what happens between signing and closing on a home. And I wanted to go over, how appraisers can value the same property differently. It's really interesting when you're doing that. It's like people ask all the time. They're like, well, how do you know what the value or whatever is, what it's going to be, based on an appraiser? And I tell people all the time that the appraisal is simply somebody's opinion. And that's all it is. It's an educated opinion, but it is someone's opinion. So we haven't had a lot of trouble with the appraisals today. We haven't had a lot of trouble with them, basically, because the bottom line is that the appraisals are, because the market has been fairly consistent, you don't run into problems with appraisals when the market's consistent. If the market's going up, then many times you run into problems with appraisers, and sometimes when the market's going down, you run into problems with appraisals. And so, if the market's going up, obviously, then the appraisals are not keeping up with the market at all. And when we have that type of situation, which we did a few years ago, you're not going to have, the appraisal come in. And so when you get into that as a seller, then you have to put things into your contract to make sure that the buyers are going to be able to come up with the money that if the house doesn't appraise. And it's just one person's opinion. And so now there are more and more AI valued appraisals, and depending on how much money people are putting down, they're not as significant as they were. If you're only putting 3% down, for example, they're not going to be as stringent in regards to, making sure that a person goes out there and checks out the house. But many times today, they still do that. But there are some what they call desktop appraisals that they're just looking at the everything that's online, whether it be pictures, whether it be looking at the old sales and stuff like that, which I really do find interesting on appraisals, because that many times when they're doing an appraisal on a property, they're walking that property, and they might drive by the other properties, but they have no idea what it is on the inside for a comparable. So they're just kind of making guesses. So it's always going to be an educated guess. So that's one thing. But when the market is going down, what happens many times is that the appraisers are trying to keep up with everything. And as a result of that, what they're doing is they want to make sure that the bank is protected, because that's usually who the appraisal is for. The buyer is paying for it, but it's really for the bank to make sure that they're not making a mistake in making this loan. They want a third party to look at it. So they will discount a little bit if there is something that is going on in the market that they think that it could potentially go down. So that's another time period where the appraisals may not be 100% accurate in regards to what's going on. So you need to look and see, what happens or what's going to go on with your appraisal and how that's going to be reconciled. But there were many steps between signing and a closing, of which an appraisal might just be one of them. And the first thing, that when someone signs an agreement, that they need to usually put some money in escrow. I don't think that I have any deals that I've ever done that somebody didn't put any money in escrow. And normally you're going to put that with the title company or with the attorney who's going to be closing the sale. Some of them do go with real estate companies. We don't have an escrow account. We put it with the title companies or the attorneys that are going to be closing the sale. And they have accounts that are definitely held there, and it's typically applied to your down payment and other closing costs is what happened. But I have had times where people put a down payment down and then they get money back at closing. It's pretty rare, but that is something that can happen and everything as well. Then the thing that happens after that is that if you are going to get a mortgage, is that you have to apply for that. The contract says that you should apply for that usually within the first 5 days, because they want to make sure that everything is timely and moving ahead. And the reason that we usually use mortgage brokers or people that are independent of the that are independent of others is because they definitely want to make sure that that it's going to close on time. So when you're using a mortgage broker, they're usually right on top of it, trying to get it done as fast as possible. Sometimes when you use the standard banks, not all of them, but many of them, they just take their time, and their time limits, like if it says a date on the contract, to them it doesn't mean anything. We did a contract recently that we sold a house that had an assumable mortgage, and so that had to be, and it was a VA loan, and it had to be done through the bank that was servicing the loan. And they didn't really care about timelines at all, so they said they needed 90 days to close the loan, which normally it's 30 days or less to close the loan, but they needed 90 days. Now, there was really slim to no risk for the bank in this transaction because 50% of the purchase price was being paid in cash. The other 50% was an assumable loan, and the buyer could have gotten a loan elsewhere. So there wasn't anything. I mean, they had the buyer approved within a week, but in order for them to do all their paperwork, they actually took 90 days. So I think that there are some banks that are more expeditious than others, but there are some of them that definitely take their time. And so we're very cautious of that to make sure that, before we work with the bank, that we talk to them and say, hey, these are the dates where things need to be done, and is that going to be a challenge? Because we really need to make that happen. Next in line after you apply for your loan is the inspection. And it's not required to do a home inspection, but it's usually it's definitely very good. Most of the time on our contracts, we're using the as-is contract. And so when you do the inspection, if you see something that you saw when you were looking at the property, like say there was a big crack in the sidewalk or something like that, was a house I recently did, and they came back on the inspection and they're like, oh, well, there's a big crack in the sidewalk, and we're like, and you saw that when you saw the house, right? And they said, yeah, we did. So that should have been considered in your purchase price as opposed to something that was in the inspection. Now, if you're going in and you find that there's something wrong with the electrical panel or something like that, that's not necessarily something that you would have seen during the time that you were actually looking at the home. And many times it's something that the seller was not aware of and everything as well. So the inspection just gives you kind of peace of mind when you're going through the process that this is the status of the house at this point in time. So that's another good point to know as well, is that you do need to know that that at the time of the inspection is what was happening then. And that's not necessarily guaranteeing that the air conditioner isn't going to break down after closing or anything like that, and all of that. So you want to make sure that you're protected on that as well. So I did a class earlier this week as well that was on home warranties, and basically what those are, which a lot of people are not aware what they are, but a home warranty is something that can take effect the day that you close on a property and go for the next year. So if something were to happen to the hot water heater or were to happen to the air conditioner and none of that stuff was identified, during the inspection, then they would fix that stuff for you. And sometimes they would replace it depending on what the company is and what their parameters are in regards to with the home warranty that you get. And so basically, the home warranty is another insurance package that you can get on the home, and you can get it as a consumer, that you could go out there and get a home warranty now if you wanted to. But usually if you do that, they're more expensive than if you were to get it at the time of closing. You have to wait 30 days before you can have any claims. So it's not like you can go out there and get a warranty and your air conditioner breaks tomorrow, whereas if you close on a property and you get it, then you can do that. Then what happens is they do a title search. They're checking to make sure that everything is okay with that there isn't any problems with anything there. And then all of the documents and everything are prepared once everybody has approved everything. And then we go to closing. And it sounds like it's very simple, but there are a lot of little things that can happen along the way that you don't want to. So that's why it makes so much difference in regards to who you're working with. But in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So, we're in tax season, so I found some things that talked about tax. And one of the things that came out this week was DeSantis pushes an unusual plan to abolish property taxes. So I'm going to be talking about that, but I'm going to be talking before that about the taxes, the federal taxes, and what you can do. And first of all, you can deduct your mortgage interest deduction. So we have calculators and that kind of thing that we use, that when you're looking at a mortgage, you can look at what the tax advantages are. Now, it's not obviously 100% accurate, and so you might want to check with your accountant to see for sure what you can do, because everybody's circumstances are a little bit different. But basically, there are tax advantages in you having a mortgage. The first one is the mortgage interest deduction. And that's the interest paid on up to $750,000 worth of your principal on either your first or second residence. And if you're married and filing separately, then the limit drops to $375,000. But if you bought points on your mortgage, then that's also something that you might be able to deduct. And then the next thing are the state and local tax deductions. So that's the property taxes that you pay on your residence. And so we have property taxes now. Some people think they're high. Personally, I think they're not terrible, but they reset every time somebody buys a property, and that's one of the biggest myths that I think people have, is that they think that people don't have to, if you look at what the property taxes are now, you're going to know what they are later, and that is definitely a myth. So I definitely like to talk to people about that so that you know exactly, what's going to end up being a property tax that you have when you do that, but you can deduct it from your taxes. The other thing is that there are some potential home improvements that you can deduct. Now, you can't write off anything like a new sofa that spruced up your living room, but things that add to the value of your home, prolong its useful life, or to adapt to new users. So there's certain capital improvements considered to be medical expenses that can qualify for deductions. And so that would be an entrance ramp or widening a doorway or something like that. And some upgrades that make your house more accessible may qualify as well, as like adding railings to a bathroom or installing modified smoke detectors for someone with hearing issues and that kind of thing. And general capital improvement expenses are depreciated over time, meaning the full cost of the thing is divided by its useful life, and that's the amount you deduct in a given year. Now, I know that there are also green energy upgrades that you can deduct, and that might be if you made energy efficient improvements on your home. So these are reduce your taxable income and are based on your tax rate. Tax credits are also directly reduce the amount of taxes you own. So if you installed new energy equipment to your home, like solar panels, you might be eligible for residential clean energy credit, and it's worth 30% of the cost of the new qualified clean energy property that's installed anywhere 22 through 32. So that's what the scoop is there. That credit is non-refundable, which means the credit amount you receive can't exceed the amount you owe in tax. So there's also an energy efficient home improvement credit, which covers upgrades that reduce home energy use. So that's like insulation, central air conditioners, and exterior doors may qualify, and it's a 30% credit up to $1,200 for changes made between 23 and 32. So there's even a credit available for installing an electric vehicle recharging equipment at your home. The federal tax credit for EV chargers is worth 30% of the cost of the qualifying equipment, up to $1,000 per charging unit. So right there might be some tax things that you weren't thinking about that you might want to talk to your accountant, or if you do your own taxes, that you might want to look at. So now to the unusual plan to abolish property taxes. So as you know, if you're a resident here, Florida has no income tax, and now Ron DeSantis is pushing for a plan that eliminates the state property tax. So this happened last week, and he said that property tax says that you never really own your own property because you have to pay rent to the government, is, in his opinion, is what he was saying. Now, it's a radical proposal that would require overhauls of both state and local government budgets, and property taxes are collected from homeowners and businesses and provide a crucial source of funds for the infrastructure. So right now, they were saying in Miami-Dade County that 37% of the operating budget comes from property taxes. So that money is going to have to come from somewhere else. But basically, $3 billion comes from the property taxes. So that's quite a bit that comes from there, right? And so residents in every state pay some type of property tax. Those rates vary by different areas. In New Jersey, it's about 0.32%, while, not New Jersey. New Jersey is the highest. I don't know who is the lowest. The highest is New Jersey at 2.23%. And basically that's what it comes down to. So a rollback in property taxes would require a constitutional amendment. So it's not happening yet, and obviously, you know, if they're in Florida, you have to have a lot of people that sign the petition to get it as an amendment, and then it has to pass by 60%. So it's a ways off, but it's something that could happen, and that would definitely be something that would help in real estate. I know that a few years ago we did, probably 10 years ago now, I don't know how long ago it was, that we did portability on your taxes. And I noticed that, you know, way back before everything crashed, like in about 2006 or 7, that as the houses went up, the property taxes went up as well. And so if you were homesteaded and you had it so that your property taxes weren't increasing too much, you might sell your house, say, at $400,000 or $500,000 today, and you only paid $300,000 for it. Well, your taxes are kind of based on that $300,000 price as opposed to the $500,000 price. So as a result of that, it made it more prohibitive for people to think that they were actually going to move because they thought, hey, I'm just going to stick around until those property taxes go down. So there's a lot that's involved when it comes to property taxes, and you want to make sure that you've got all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed when you're looking at a house and what the property taxes are. And today that's definitely important, but in the future it might not be as important, but we'll probably have higher sales taxes or something else is going to be, taking its place. And I'm not sure exactly what that is at this particular moment. I have to do more research on it, but something for everybody to look at and to be considerate and look at and know. And, I'll have more to talk about that later, but that was just something that came up in the news this week. That was something that I thought was interesting, and when we're talking about taxes. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty and Central Florida Real Estate Radio. To discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to go over today reasons to love home ownership. And basically, there's several reasons, but there's also the first thing that I'm going to talk about is most millennials doubt that they can own a home. And this is, to me, it's kind of alarming numbers. And I think that it comes down to probably a lack of knowledge more than actually reality. But that's what it is many times in life, right? It's like what we think as opposed to what really is. So right now, it said 21% of millennials believe their generation can that they can afford homes, which is down from 52% in 2024. So that's down roughly almost 31% is what it's down. So that's kind of crazy. They're worried about finding affordable homes is the number one reason. 44% of them are, and that's up from 35% in 2024. So the good news about it right here in Central Florida is that the prices are basically the same as what they were then in 2024, and the amount for the interest rates are basically a little bit lower. So that's all good. So they shouldn't be concerned about that, but obviously they are. And all millennials, 97%, face barriers to home ownership, with financial challenges topping the list. 52% cite high home prices, 48% point to high interest rates, and then 44% struggle to save for a down payment. So the thing that you need to know if you're a millennial or somebody else that's looking to buy a home, all of those things are things that we can work on. Like we can have a seller, like I said earlier in the show, that sellers are paying some closing costs for buyers. Now they can buy down rates for buyers, and so it gets that interest rate down. They can help with down payments. There's some loans that you don't even need a down payment, and other than that, it's about 3%, which many times that's as much as you're going to need for a down payment of an apartment. So there might not be as big of a barrier as people make it out to be, and that's kind of the way things are in life sometimes, right? That we make these barriers that are bigger than they need to be. So my opinion is that what everybody should do is that basically they should talk to someone like myself and get all of their, get all of the things that they need to get done and be able to afford what they can afford and have that home ownership. So half of millennials would buy a home with asbestos pests such as mice, cockroaches, and spiders. How crazy is that? And 57% would make an offer on a fixer-upper. Now, there are certain people that definitely have the gift of putting things together, and a fixer-upper is a great plan. But, there are other alternatives of properties that you can buy. Maybe it's going to be a little bit smaller. Maybe it's going to be a little bit further out. But there are alternatives of what you can do to get your foot in the door. And then as the property values increase, you're going to be ready to do that next step as well. 74% of millennials believe that high interest rates make now a bad time to buy a home, but 76% they would be enticed to buy if rates fell in 2025. Right there is a reason that I think people should probably buy something now. The reason is because if the interest rates go down, then that's going to cause a frenzy of all of the houses that are out there. Because look at that, 74% say if the rates go down that they would be enticed to buy a house in 2025. So that's a lot of pent-up demand, as you were. And so if you get it now, and then when the rates go down, you actually lower your payment, you don't have to fight with everybody to get that house that everybody's trying to get. So that's why I think it's really important that you really look at the whole picture now, look at your situation now, and see if it's something that you want to do. 67% of millennials regret not buying a home when prices were lower, and 32% expect to max out their budgets in 2025. So nearly half of millennials, 45%, think their generation faces the greatest challenges in affording homes, while 33% blame boomers for being most responsible for the affordable housing costs. So I don't know that the baby boomers have much to do in regards to what's going on with the housing market and everything. I mean, they're a big part of it, obviously. But when it comes down to it, it's always a struggle. I remember when I bought my first property, I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? It was I had been sharing an apartment with somebody else. And so, we split everything. And so then when I bought my own place, I was going off on my own. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I mean, I did it when I was 25. And so I thought, well, this is kind of a scary thing to do, that I'm signing this document for, 30 years and all of that kind of good stuff. And the time really goes fast, as you might know, and I didn't stay in that property forever, but it ended up being a really good deal. And basically, as time went on and as my equity grew, it's like my payment stayed the same, and the rental market and everything was increasing quite a bit, but my payment was staying very steady. So it was pretty awesome. So what you want to do is that you basically want to make sure that, it might be a stretch when you get that first home, but you want to look at the alternatives. What's going on? Where are you going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now? And we have, like I said, all of those calculators that we can sit down with you, go through your specific situation, what your tax status is, what the rental rates are going to be doing, and what the housing rates are going to be doing and everything like that. And we can be extremely conservative. And when you look at it that way, most people, when they look at it, they would be far ahead in owning a property than they would be in renting. And so, it just comes down to really looking at your situation and what's going to be the best thing for you. Now, when you're looking at the reasons to love home ownership, the number one reason is the incredible accomplishment that comes with it. So it's no small feat. Preparing for the purchase is likely the largest transaction that you'll make in your life, especially the first time that you do it. That it's like a big step. When you're stepping up to a bigger house, it might not be as big of a deal, but it still can be stressful and everything. But the more you do it, maybe the more comfortable and everything that you feel about it. But it is an accomplishment to be able to do it. And it can be a financial asset, that it can help you achieve financial wellness and set future generations up for financial success as well. And so you might want to do that. It provides stability because, like I said, you know what your payment's going to be, especially if you homestead in the taxes and everything. You're not going to have too much that's going to happen in regards to that. And then it's customizable, that it's ready for your creativity. You can do whatever you want to within reason inside the home. Outside of the home, you might have some regulations with a homeowners association or something like that. But I know many times if you're renting a place, you can't paint, you can't put pictures on the wall. There's a lot of things that you can't do. But if you own the home, you're able to do all of those things. Next in line is that it serves as the backdrop for your life's milestone. Maybe you keep your kids' height on the wall so that you can see definitely what's going on. And then it can provide a sense of community because your neighbors stay the same day in and day out. They don't always change. So those are just some of the things that go into home ownership and the reason why you might want to do it. And so I think it's just the time to take the chance to talk to somebody and actually find out what works and what doesn't. And we're more than happy to help you. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.